Horses exist within the Pokemon universe, and there are many examples. I believe this is one of the franchise's greatest strengths. Horses are a popular animal that are often friendly towards humans. The horse spectrum within Pokemon is nuanced and varied. Mudsdale is more of a regular, real-life horse, while Glastrier is a fantastical ice-based horse. Such horse variety has scarcely been rivaled by other monster-collecting RPGs for children. The Pokemon Muck is not considered a horse, as far as we know. I am going to rank all of these horses now, from worst to best, factoring in their competitive viability and consistency from game to game. This is going to be a very serious video, so I don't want any of you to be laughing about this or leaving any jokes in the comment section. Thank you for understanding. No more horsing around. The horse ranking begins here. I've got my horse attire on from JimothyCool.com. Anyone serious about horses knows all about JimothyCool.com. And on that note, let's begin with the worst horse in the game. It's Blitzel. Blitzel is at the very bottom of the list. A regrettable, not fully evolved horse, but even amongst its fellow Little Cup level 5 Pokemon, it's an unimpressive choice. And I know what you're thinking, Jim, this is a zebra, that's a whole different species, but actually zebras are part of the same genus as horses, the Equus genus, so I think that this is a horse-adjacent creature at the very least. I don't think that Blitzel gets much respect in the world. He's never ranked anywhere. So I thought it would be kind of me to put him on the list as an extension of the olive branch so that he's acknowledged somewhere. Unfortunately though, the only place where he's ever been acknowledged as a valid being is one where he is at the very bottom of the list, the worst of all time. Blitzel in Little Cup is outclassed often by other electric types available like Elekid and Voltorb, for example, who have more desirable traits. Voltorb is a high speed, access to explosion, some good stuff. Blitzel is an unfortunate Pokemon. It only has 50 special attack and 60 attack. Even among babies, that's bad. 50 special attack especially is terrible. And Wild Charge is your electric stab of choice. It's a death sentence if this is your best electric option because you're recoiling yourself. You do not have much time to exist. Blitzel does have Lightning Rod, that's quite good, but even with the special attack boost, you're boosting up like nothing here. You got Pursuit, that might be useful to someone, but probably not. This is an unimpressive Pokemon all around, unfortunately. And I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. Up next is Galarian Ponyta. This is a bad horse, I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Terrible horse. Galarian Ponyta is a mono-psychic typing instead of a fire typing like the default Ponyta, and that's worse. It's worse. It evolves to get fairy typing, that's good, but in the base form, in the pre-evolved form, this is just a simple psychic type and that's no good. You're weak to Dark, Ghost, and Bug. Knockoff is everywhere, Ghost type attacks are everywhere, U-turn is popular, and you're weak to all of them. Instead of Flash Fire, you have the ability Pastel Veil. This Pokemon and its allies cannot be poisoned, so you get some poison immunity. Tell somebody who cares about that. That's not very valuable in the world of Gen 8, the only gen where this exists in. Just simply not as good as Flash Fire. Your other option is Run Away with no competitive use, but maybe this Pokemon should run away because that's its best bet in combat. It will not be able to do much in a head-to-head. It's got Carmine, so it can boost up Heal with Morning Sun. It's got Mystical Fire. That's fire coverage. Not the absolute worst thing on the planet in Gen 8 Little Cup, but it is inferior to the default Ponyta, and generally not a desirable choice. It's also got more attack than special attack, but not much to show for it in terms of options there. So, bad horse overall. Up next is Horsey. A lot of people would say it's controversial to put this guy on here because of all the things he's done, all those atrocities he's committed, but I think he counts. He's got horse in his name. He's a seahorse. That's close enough for me. This guy's got Swift Swim on him, which double speed in the rain. Very powerful ability in many contexts, and in Little Cup over the years, in Gen 3 ZU, it's a pretty good rain threat, but generally speaking in Little Cup, manual rain setting is a little bit cumbersome. You'd rather be more immediately threatening, and many things can handle this. Many common fellows such as Ferroseed and whatnot can thwart at Horsey's attempts, so pretty inconsistent in the lower end formats, but still a horse in some domains. Up next, we've got Mudbray. this is a little bit more of an impressive horse, and it's a very traditional horse, looking a lot like a real-life creature. And I can respect that. Mudbray is an honest Pokemon. It's got the ability Stamina, which raises your defense if you take damage. That's a good ability. That's got some value. It's a mono ground type, always a lovely defensive typing. And it's got access to Stealth Rock. It's got a good physical move pool with Stab Earthquake, Close Combat, Heavy Slam is good for fairies. And high attack for a little horse like this. 100 attack for a little baby is impressive. Even 70 defense is not bad. That's boosted by Eviolite, mind you. You're a bit slow, and on the special side you're a bit weak, but you do your job well. As a physical wall that gets ramping defense, you got access to rocks. In Little Cup, putting a Mudbray on your team is not a bad option. It's a pretty damn solid, bulky ground type among its fellow children, and I value that. I value Mudbray. I think it's a pretty well-made and well-rounded horse overall. Up next is Ponyta, and of all the baby horses, you gotta give it to this one. This is the best baby horse in the franchise. Pretty consistently seen in Little Cup in multiple generations, and even ranked ZU in Gen 3 where it's one of the best Pokemon. For a baby Pokemon, you got decent stats, 85 attack, 90 speed. You got good abilities. Flash Fire is great, granting fire immunity and a boost to fire type damage if you get hit by one. You've of course got Flame Body as well, which you get later. 30% chance to burn on contact. That's pretty valuable. That's got its upsides. Decent enough offensive move pool as well to take advantage of all this stuff. Flare Blitz for a high power attack. That's quite nice. You got a high horsepower because you're a horse, of course. That's expected on a horse-themed Pokemon. And, you know, quick attack back in Gen 3 ZU is a good option to hit those berry users and pick off enemies. You got to give some respect to Ponyta, consistently seen in Little Cup in many contexts, and outranked its Galarian form. Overall, a respectable horse in many arenas, and I gotta give it up for Ponyta. Up next is Kingdra, the evolved form of Horsey, the middle stage of the line. You don't see this Pokemon too often. It doesn't fit anywhere really. It is a Pokemon in Gen 3 PU's metagame, and what's interesting about it is it functions pretty differently to its brothers. It's got the ability Poison Point. Neither of them have this, which poisons on contact, does not have Swift Swim, so it's perhaps a more defensively leaning Pokemon for this reason, with the bulky water type option that can inflict some poison on contact. These middle evolutions rarely show up anywhere, but this is a Pokemon in the Gen 3 PU metagame, and probably some Gen 1 metagame too. If it goes anywhere, I suppose it goes here. An underappreciated Pokemon. You do not see this guy that often, do you? But he is a horse in my mind. That's a seahorse. A seahorse is not a horse? I mean, listen to yourself. Listen to what you're saying. It says horse right there. Come on. Of course he counts. And it wouldn't be a horse ranking without the next Pokemon, folks. Everybody give it up for Magcargo, our favorite horse. Many would consider this a non-horse. In most contexts, you're correct, but in Gen 9 specifically, they gave Magcargo the move High Horsepower, and that was enough to be considered a horse by certain governing bodies for a brief period. They've since changed that, but Magcargo is the last, former non-horse that is still considered a horse by law. So he qualifies for the list. Congratulations. Unfortunately, a pretty low-end horse, I gotta be honest. Fire Rock typing is not very good. The ability Magma Armor is nothing. You got Flame Body, that's good. Flame Body is very good. But what are you resisting with typing like that? You're weak to everything. You got a great defense stat though, very impressive, very very impressive. You can also Terra Water, and that makes you a water type instead. That's pretty good. Memento combo into Iron Valiant or something. I think Magcargo has high potential. Just kidding, not really. Magcargo is not really fit for battle. That's not where he thrives. He's more of a political player who does things from the shadows to influence events. Not so much a Pokemon that's gonna get into the thick of it and do battle himself. But if he needs to, he does have a defense stat to help him out if it comes to that, Up next is Zebstrika. Yes, it's a zebra. We've been through this. We're putting him on out of respect. Zebstrika is horse adjacent enough, and that's fine by me. This Pokemon's kind of a non-functional electric type. It's got Lightning Rod, good ability, but the stats are a little bit weird. It's got above average speed, okay attack, but not enough attack to be honest. And not a great move pool to support a physical attacker. It's got Wild Charge, doesn't have much in the way of other physical coverage. So this set right here is just using special attacks because that's what it has. It can pivot with Volt Switch. It's got Overheat is probably one of its most noteworthy options. Pretty nice high power fire coverage, but besides that, every electric type on the planet is outclassing this. It's not got much going for it, unfortunately for Zebra fans, but good on Zebstrika for outranking some of the other horses and let's move on. Up next we have Galarian Rapidash. It's a Psychic Fairy type Pokemon, that's pretty good. The ability Pastel Veil, I mean, as we went through with Ponyta, it's not great, but maybe it lets you be a Calm Minesweeper against things that rely on Toxic to beat them. Kind of like how Magic Bounce helps Hatterene. Even though Magic Bounce helps versus more things, Pastel Veil can help against this one thing. So that's something maybe. Its stats though, the attack is not doing you any favors. Low bulk, low health, speed is 105, that's alright. But you're not doing very much with this. It's a ZU ranked Pokemon in Gen 8, and that's a little bit rough, honestly speaking, for an exciting new Galarian form of a classic Pokemon. It's a pretty unimpressive debut, and they would never bring it back again, and maybe we can see why. It's got stored power with Stab on it, it's got Dazzling Gleam, but what else? Not much else really for Rapidash Galarian. Up next is the original Rapidash, probably the most famous horse Pokemon in the series. Introduced in Gen 1, recognizable, iconic. Always been an average Pokemon though, ever since the beginning. Not a fantastic Pokemon overall, but better than many of these horses. You know, horses can range wildly in their power level. Rapidash is a middle-of-the-road horse, but a respectable one. Much like Ponyta, you got the Flame Body and Flash Fire abilities, which are great. In Gen 8, you got access to Boots, allowing Rapidash to actually be a bit of a bulky pivot support Pokemon sort of guy with access to Morning Sun in Gen 8. That's nice. It's got Will-O-Wisp to inflict burn, a high horsepower for a bit of physical coverage. Never hurt anybody. That's pretty nice. This has way more going for it than Galarian Rapidash. And, you know, historically, it's been okay in, like, I think it was Gen 3 UU ranked. It's got Hypnosis, too, does it not? I might have forgotten. No, it still knows how to hypnotize you. It still remembers that one. So that could come in handy. You never know. But still, you know, you can see clearly this is a pretty average, middle-of-the-road Pokemon with stats that aren't too impressive. Same stats as Galarian Rapidash, I think. But a pretty decent amount of advantages on this, not too horrendous. Up next is Mudsdale, a very well-respected horse, the most classical horse in the series, very evocative of the real animal. And, you know, as far as modern horse Pokemon, this is the most iconic, I would say. You think of a horse, you think of Mudsdale, to be honest with you. It's the poster child for horse Pokemon these days, and it does a good job of it. It's got many of the same traits as its Mudbray prior evolution. The monoground typing, the ability Stamina, which grants defense on hit, access to Stealth Rock, you know, good utility of Toxic, I suppose, some decent physical options, but, you know, the bulky ground type role is a crowded one in competitive Pokemon. There's many Pokemon like this with ground typing, rocks, and, you know, attacks. Mudsdale's not a bad one. It's got pretty well distributed stats, high attack as well. The low speed is a big downside though. I mean, it's kind of an obvious statement, but Landorus Therian's going to outclass this. In Gen 9, of course, Great Tusk, there's Gliscor, there's many others. Ground type Pokemon with such utility that do a bit more than this. But still, this is an honest, hardworking Pokemon that is going to get the job done pretty well. Honestly, if you just chucked this guy on a team in place of a generic bulky ground type, it could probably function all right. I think it's mostly just outclassed by them, but if it's doing the same thing, it probably still works fairly well, I imagine. It's got all the same fundamental traits that are important. So for Mudsdale, this is a very, very solid horse. Extremely solid horse. Up next is Glastrier, a legendary horse made out of pure ice. What a beautiful creature. This Pokemon has its issues though, especially in competitive singles where mono ice typing and that low speed are very detrimental. It's pretty good in doubles though, as Trick Room support turns it into a formidable foe. It's got great stats. The most impressive stats of any horse so far, with high HP and defense, monstrous attack, good special defense too. It's just that speed stat and the typing that's giving it a hard time, but in doubles, there's a functional Pokemon. In singles as well, I mean, I think it has some use in OU sometimes. Maybe if you happen to be running a Trick Room team, it's one of the better things to put on. It works pretty well there. It's got high horsepower for that ever valuable ice ground coverage combo. You love that. Close combat for some coverage is also good. So you could technically put Mudsdale above this. It's in a higher position, but I think Glastrier has higher potential, and on the right team it can achieve more. So I'll put Glastrier above Mudsdale, and fundamentally, I mean, these stats, this ability Chilling Neigh, which ramps your attack as well, I think you got to give Glastrier a bit of respect. Not a great Pokemon in the world of legendaries, but in the world of horses, is a higher end horse. It's a pretty high end horse. Up next is Kingdra, the most powerful of all sea horses. And this is a pretty good Pokemon overall. Has a consistent track record, mostly for its role as a rain sweeper with the ability Swift Swim, and it's one of the most solid in that role ever. Even back in Gen 3, before permanent rain existed, This would just use Rain Dance manually and be a pretty effective sweeper with that double speed. The water dragon typing helps, that's good typing. Back then it only had one weakness to dragon itself and it gained a fairy weakness later, but still pretty good resistances and overall neutral typing to switch in on stuff with Kingdra. And in Gen 7, this was just an excellent Pokemon in OU, taking advantage of Pelipper as an ally to set rain for it, and go in with the Swift Swim. Back in Gen 4, this guy could also do a bit more than just Swift Swim with like Dragon Dance Rest Chesterberry set. That was fun, back when dragons were broken. I'm a big fan of Kingdra. I think it's a beautiful horse, and it's a consistent and powerful horse throughout the years. I think it deserves many accolades for that. Up next, we have Keldeo, and this is definitely a horse, right? It's got the hooves. It's got horse features. What animal is this if not a horse? Keldeo is the most solid Pokemon here so far. In fact, in many contexts, it's excellent. In Gen 5 OU, it's one of the best Pokemon in the game. A premier rain abuser with a water fighting typing. Beautiful offensively and defensive. Solid stats with high special attack and speed. The fantastic signature move Secret Sword, which hits based on defense with a fighting type attack. I mean, you're a special attacker that can one-shot Blissey. That in itself is beautiful. The ability Justified, kind of useless, but you don't need an ability when you've got such good traits elsewhere. Keldeo's peak is in Gen 5, but throughout the generations, it continues to be solid and definitely a pretty powerful horse. For simple reasons, it's effective at its intended role of being a special attacker, and that earns it a high spot on the horse power rankings. They have made Palkia into a horse, folks, and this is very interesting. Palkia Origin is here, and I have not included Dialga Origin on this list. I don't think Dialga Origin is as horse-like. I don't know what creature that is, but Palkia Origin is clearly horse-like. You need the Lustrous Globe to be able to exist in this form. You can't run any other item, but you're a powerful legendary Pokemon. You got 20 higher speed than the base form Palkia, 20 lower attack. It's a pretty good trade-off. You can hit faster, be a bit more threatening sometimes. All the same beautiful traits that Palkia has. Water Dragon typing, the massive Draco Meteor, many of the things that are desirable about base form Palkia. Incredible stats. This is clearly a high-end horse. You've taken something and morphed it into a horse, so I don't know if it's as honest as something like Mudsdale, who was born a horse to begin with, but this is undeniably a very powerful horse in the Pokemon universe. Up next, Spectrier. This is a ghost horse. Very scary. Be careful. Be careful, everybody. This guy was banned from OU in both Gen 8 and 9. It's got the ability Grim Neigh, which is special attack version of Moxie, very strong. Mono Ghost, always pretty solid, and very powerful stats. Pretty solid base HP, but the real kicker is the 145 special attack and 130 speed. Similar distribution to Glastrier, but you have speed instead of defenses, and that's far better. That's way better. Spectrier can snowball out of control very easily by just spamming Shadow Ball, of course. And in Gen 8, this guy had no real good coverage, but they gave it Draining Kiss in Gen 9, which is pretty significant. That's a Fairy-type coverage and a form of healing, so that's strong. You can also Terrastalize in Generation 9, so you can run Terra Blast to get coverage. All things considered, I think this is probably a better Pokemon in Ubers than Palkia Origin. It's a bit more threatening. It's got more of a reason to be used. You could build a team around this as a win condition, I think. And it's one of the most imposing, frightening, and high-quality horses ever built in any form of media, in any context. This is a spectacular horse. Now, I'm sure you've all heard the famous saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And this is a very nuanced phrase with a very express meaning behind it, and that is that horses are a stupid creature. They don't have much intellect. They got water in front of them and they're choosing not to drink it, despite the fact that water nourishes you and provides life. So horses are pretty dumb. But then humans can come along and ride the horse, and then that's a powerful combination, you know? Riding on a horse provides you with speed. So it only makes sense that if you take a Glastrier, an idiot Pokemon, but you put a creature with high intellect on top who can pilot him and help him and use him for an advantage. Then you have Calyrex Ice Rider. This is one entity that is two beings, and really a horse and its rider are in tandem. They exist as one in many ways. Calyrex Ice Rider is much better than the normal Glastrier. It's got an additional psychic typing. Usually that's bad, but you gain a fighting resistance. That's pretty fun. Not resistance, neutrality, sorry. The weakness is erased. Much better stats, 165 attack, way higher defenses. And you actually just directly have a Trick Room Room on the Pokemon, which is incredibly good because you got such good attack but low speed. You can just use Trick Room on the thing that wants to take advantage of it, and there's a rare instance where Trick Room is a viable option in competitive singles because it's just an all-in-one package of a Trick Room threat. Even without Trick Room, you got such impressive bulk and attack that you can live hits from most things and strike back in a lot of contexts. It's a backup check, or it's a win con in the end game, and you got the ever-valuable Glacial Lance. That's a massive ice type attack. You got high horsepower, as every good horse does. And the Ice Ground is a beautiful coverage combo. It's a very effective Pokemon, and in doubles, this Pokemon's truly excellent because Trick Room there is even better. But it's a testament to how good this guy is that it makes Trick Room functional in singles. That's not an easy thing to do. A great Pokemon in Ubers, and this horse has had plenty of water to drink. He's nourished, and he's ready for battle. Up next is Arceus, and is this even a horse? I googled it, and they told me Arceus is a white equine Pokemon. Equine? That means horse. That's a horse right there. So we have evidence. Arceus is a powerful mythical Pokemon known for its incredible diversity. It's got 120 stats across the board in everything. It can be any role it wants to. Defensive, offensive, attack, special attack, utility. It's got so many options. Recovery, direct offensive options. It can also be any type in the game thanks to the multi-type ability. You put a plate on this, such as the Splash plate or something, and it will become water type. You put the Pixie plate, that's a damn fairy type now. That's a dang old fairy type. So Arceus, in every single generation it's existed, and it's a staple of Ubers. It's fantastic, versatile. It can adapt to the metagame like nothing else, and it's a definitive horse. It is perhaps the original horse, perhaps the most archetypical of all horses. A horse molds to the environment around it and creates an environmental niche for itself to thrive and survive, and that's exactly what Arceus does. And unlike other horses, it has self-actualized intellect. It doesn't need to be ridden by a Calyrex to function. Calyrex Arceus Rider? You might slow me down, Calyrex, said Arceus. You wouldn't help me. This is an elite being with it. He can probably speak English, this guy. So, a very good horse. Truly an outstanding horse. And the most powerful horse of all should come as no surprise. It is Calyrex Shadow Rider. The highest potential horse does exist with a rider. 2 entities combining as 1. This is like a better Spectrier. It's a Psychic Ghost type. It's got the Grimnay and the Unnerve abilities combined into 1. The move Astral Barrage is crazy, 120 power ghost move. I mean, Shadow Ball is already good enough on Spectrier to sweep games. This is just overkill. This is crazy. And in doubles, it hits both foes. That's nuts. One of the strongest moves ever. The stats are through the roof. 150 base speed is outrunning the entire planet. 165 special attack is great. You even have some pretty decent bulk considering. You got Grass Knot for a bit of coverage, Psychic for some stab, Trick for some utility. So this is like Spectrier, but Spectrier has the downside of not having many flexible options, not much coverage. Calyrex Shadow has a little bit more. And you can Terrastalize now in Gen 9, and Terrastalize breaks this thing beyond belief. Either you Terrastalize Ghost and just hit massively hard with this, or you can get Terra Blast for whatever coverage you want, any type you want. It's yours for the taking. And this snowballs like crazy. It outruns just about every other legendary, and it's no surprise to see this topping the horse rank. It's even banned to anything goes in Gen 9 because it was just that strong. It's a perfect example of the high potential of horses as a species and what you can accomplish when you form a strong bond with your horse. And on that note, there is our horse ranking concluded. Thank you all for watching. Did I miss any horses? I don't think so. Furfrau, I looked it up. He's horse looking, but I'm pretty sure that's a dog. Creature of some kind. He's described as the poodle Pokemon. Don't think that's a horse. There are also deer Pokemon, but that's a whole different genus. So I don't think that counts either. Like Stantler, for example. Not a horse in my mind. Wouldn't say so. But what do you think, everybody? Would you have ranked these horses differently? Who's your favorite horse? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.